evening,
and
good night. We skipped good morning.
Good morning.
Because it's
also.
afternoon.
That's true. We're recording this in the afternoon.
Usually we record in the morning.
We do.
Today we did the afternoon.
And there's a reason for that. And remind me, those of you guys who are listening, remind me, I'm going to say this word, Junior, and we'll get to it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's the reason why we... Yeah, that's the whole thing.
Absolutely.
Okay, so my name is John.
My name's Arvin.
And this is Behind the Scenes.
Of our best days.
So this is season 4. We're really grateful that we get to be here.
Absolutely.
We're grateful. I'm actually grateful that you're still talking to me.
I am very grateful for our friendship and the fact that I still get to partner with John in these podcasts and other things that we get to do together. It's as fun as it's ever been.
Yes,
What if the whole podcast is me doing it?
Yes. Okay. So one time, guys, those of you who, if this is your first one, I promise you, we will get to the point.
Yeah.
But I was at this one student leadership conference, and there was an individual, John Maxwell, who is an incredible leadership dude.
Big time.
And then there was another guy who... Now, this is a conference for college-age people.
Yeah.
And I was the MC. And so I introduced them. There was this other guy who came up who invited John Maxwell to come. And he was like, we're going to do a Q&A.
Nice.
And he was, you could tell, the guy who was doing the Q&A with John Maxwell, it was his hero.
Yeah.
And so backstage, he was like, hey, guys, this is the temperature of the water. This is the, like, it needs to have this napkin. Now I want it to be cloth. I don't want it to be, like, cotton. Wow. And we were like, what? And he was like, John Maxwell is a god, lowercase g, because we believe in Christianity, and there's only one God.
Only one capital.
But I was like, yeah, John Maxwell is brilliant, and I love his books.
Yeah.
He is a dude.
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
He would tell you that, too.
And he would tell you that, because that's his personality.
That's right.
But, guys... I'm not joking when I say this. It was an hour, and the guy asking the Q&A gets up, and he was like, and I'm the MC, and I go, and now I present to you, blah, blah, blah. I say this guy's name, and John Maxwell, the panel Q&A. 1,500 students clap. The guy just goes, and starts crying. And he's just like, John, I just want to say you are a father to me. And you can tell John Maxwell is caught off guard.
I'm sure.
I am watching from the side, and I'm like, oh no. Is this guy going to have a breakdown? Sure enough, it happens.
Oh, great.
And he was like, I'm going to get to the questions, but you are my... And he accidentally said, he goes, I think about you when I sleep.
Oh, my gosh.
I think about you when I wake up.
Oh, my gosh.
And I've memorized this book.
Oh, wow.
And John Maxwell handled it great.
I'm sure he
But
did.
it was 25 minutes. I looked at my cell phone and I was like, oh, this has gone on for 25 minutes. So I go up to the sound booth.
Yeah.
Those of you who understand what behind the scenes is, if you work in live productions,
Absolutely.
I went to the sound booth and I got to the sound guy and I was like, there's a confidence monitor, which faces the stage and it's like a countdown clock. And I go, put on there, start questions. And so we typed in start questions and I go, now flash it. Now turn it to red. Now turn it to white.
Yeah.
And I was like, start changing colors. Turn it to rainbow. Start an ambulance siren. Whatever it takes to get this guy to start asking questions.
Yeah.
John Maxwell was very graceful.
Yeah.
He handled the dude. But for 25 minutes, he was just like, and you know, you're my hero. Just looked at him. Didn't even. And so there was 1,500 students in the room, and they were like just along for the ride.
Yeah.
Anyways, at least it was rewarding for him.
That's true. Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe he's embarrassed.
Maybe not.
Yeah.
He went for 25 minutes.
That's a long. Do you think today, when that guy thinks about that he gets embarrassed?
I don't know.
Okay.
Let's call him in.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. We call him in on the show. I go, remember that one time when you were a fool?
Yeah.
No, I would never say that.
No.
He wasn't a fool. He actually just very
It's a
impacted.
human moment.
It's a
Yeah.
human moment.
That's fair.
Yes, and I've had many embarrassing human moments.
As have I.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
no judgment, but I
Sure.
just remember that.
That's so funny.
Okay, so now we're jumping into, this is behind the scenes of our Best Days podcast, and here at Victory, we are very grateful to serve our pastors.
Pastor Paul, Pastor Ashley.
And at the beginning of each chapel and each church service, we do a we all do a confession together. It's pretty awesome. It's
Yeah.
like a rah-rah chant. And in this Victory Confession, we say,
our best days are right in front of us.
and so at Victory, we produce a lot of, we have 2 worship albums that we're working on. We are working on a current fall film that we're going to start filming and then release in October of 2022.
Awesome.
And then Christmas is coming in 2022.
Yeah.
Simultaneously working on Easter and that music for 2023.
Yeah.
And then you have services each weekend. There's Tulsa Dream Center stuff. We have a conference in January.
Victory College.
There's consistent
Yeah.
production where we're having to output a lot.
Big time. Big time.
And so people on the outside would say, wow, they may be in their best days. But we are here to talk about
behind the scenes. Every church, you could be a church that doesn't have all those entities. I have a buddy who lives up north. He is the young adults, youth pastor, and children's pastor of one church.
Okay.
So 0 to 30, he's handling
over
it.
everything.
Yeah, and it's while it's
Actually,
one service,
I admire those individuals.
absolutely, because
they have to do everything.
Everything. And so there are probably people who, and I've spoken with people who listen to our podcast who are in that position in their respective churches. There's a behind the scenes there as well.
Oh,
and
100%.
So, I think it's easy to look at something in the future and go, oh, I think that's, it's going to feel like that if I did that, if it was a big enough church, if it was whatever. But the reality is it's the same human soul operating in either context. So it's
the same human soul
same
operating
energy.
a Porsche than it is operating, like a SUV.
Yeah, absolutely. No matter how big the vehicle or whatever. So the keys from each example are all important.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so we were kind of talking about this relationship. We're going to talk about 2 things today.
Yeah.
First thing, we're going into a little bit of relationship dynamics, but the number one relationship you have to have is with yourself. And so I'm going to say this statement. If you do not know how to be single, you will not know how to be married.
Absolutely.
Married is, in the American culture, it is our best days, quote unquote.
Right.
But behind the scenes
Yeah.
of your best days is, if you are not happy single, then you won't be happy married.
I believe that. You want to unpack that a little bit?
Okay.
Unzip that one and
Okay. So yeah, we were
lay
talking
the
about
clothes
this.
out there. Unpack it.
And so I'm in a season of singleness.
Yeah.
And I have my kids on the weekend.
Yeah.
3 or 4 days out
Yeah.
of the weekend, and I genuinely love it. I'm very grateful for it.
Yeah.
And there was times where I would hate the moments of me being alone. So I'm like, I want to fill this time.
Right.
So that I don't have to feel alone.
Yeah.
And then it became like a superpower.
Right. Exactly.
And I was like, oh my goodness. Now, when I say it became, that took 2.5 to 3 years to it became.
Absolutely.
It wasn't an overnight. It wasn't a month. I'm still figuring it out. But it was like a thing to where now today, I'm like, man, I'm so grateful that I have alone time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it wasn't always like that. I'm 37 years old, and I'm just now figuring it out.
Yeah,
I wish I would have learned this whenever I was 17 or 25 or whatever.
Sure.
But during that time, I'm able to like really reflect and investigate, in my interactions throughout the day.
Absolutely.
So I put on my best days in allegory speaking. So I put on clothes, gratefully.
Yes.
I go to work,
Yeah.
and people see who John is.
Yeah.
And there are some situations where you have to flip a switch.
Yeah.
If you are someone that you are like, oh, I'm the charismatic person in my group of friends, or I'm a worship or I'm a pastor, or I'm someone who has, or I'm a department head.
Yeah.
You have to be on.
Right.
And I'm doing the quotes on my
Right.
fingers. You have to be on in
Right.
front of people.
Sure.
And you have to say things of, if you're walking through the lobby, hey, can you help me with this? You're ministering to people, you're giving out.
Yeah.
You're actually pouring out a lot.
Right.
You are a container, and you don't have an endless amount of care.
Sure.
You don't even have an endless amount or bottomless amount of emotional energy.
Right.
And so you don't realize that every time you turn on, or every time you
Yeah.
are there to give
Yeah.
to people,
Yeah.
that it is depleting from you.
Totally.
And so the only time to really, if you know how to steward your alone time well, that is where it helps fill that tank. Does that make sense?
Big time. Yeah.
So you say it.
The phrasing you use that's really important is stewarding your alone time, meaning that it's not just yours. If you're a person of God and you want to like know God, then your time is something God's given you. It's a gift. You can't get more of it, and you can definitely waste
very
it.
Kung Fu Panda.
Big time, but there's a reason it is.
Yeah.
Because it applies, it's ubiquitous. It applies everywhere. And in singleness in particular, or in a married life, I think in terms of, there were idols I had made out of marriage during my time being single that I'm now paying for as a married person, as a happily married person. And it's not conducive, or it's not dependent on who you marry. It's the fact that, oh, now I'm at the place I thought I was supposed to be at. And there were habits I should have established during my time of singleness that would have been so much easier to build off of now that I'm married. And then there were other things I did well because I had really good counsel of people all around me, that yourself included, who helped me to understand how to steward my emotional energy well enough so that now those things it seems like they're paying me dividends now that I am married.
So you said something before we started this podcast. You're like, there are some things within relationships that pay you.
Yeah.
And then there are some things that you pay for.
Right. Exactly.
So break that down when it comes to single, married, taken, complicated.
For sure. Okay, so here's an example. When I was in my single season, I love that terminology that people use. I had made an idol out of the married version of Arvin. I thought that was the guy who had stuff figured out. That was the guy who was in the best shape of his life. And so it enabled me to comfortably, or more so numbingly, ignore certain growth processes, because I thought, oh, married Arvin does that. And so it was, now it's easier to unpack in retrospect, and I'm not trying to be too complicated, but basically you can make an idol out of not only who your spouse might be someday, but who you'll have permission to be that day. That's when, I'll have to have my finances together. I'll pay attention to finances.
Yeah.
And it's like, you should probably pay attention to your finances now. You should probably pay attention to, in my case, it was like physical fitness or my sleep schedule or patterns like that. So I had, shortly after getting married, and it's still shortly after, I've only been married not even 2 years, so it's been 10 minutes in married years. But very quickly I realized, oh wow, my sleep habits, I'm going to have to pay for that.
So when you were single, it was like, oh, I could go to bed at 2 a.m.
2, 3,
I could
4.
game. I could watch Netflix
Sure.
or Amazon Prime if you guys are against Netflix.
Sure.
Or Peacock or
Pure
whatever.
Flix.
Pure Flick. Oh.
All right. Whatever it is. I can watch anything.
Yeah. And it's like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
now that you're married, you actually, it puts more stress on you.
Right.
Not stress.
Yeah.
I would say weight. And I'm not saying that your spouse is heavy.
No.
Lord help us. No, what I'm saying is it puts more weight on you.
Yeah.
And it tests the structure that you built when you were single.
Totally.
It puts more, because now you're adding another human being.
Right. And it affects them. So the example here is like, I have a firm commitment that 6 or 7 days out of the week, I'm going to go to the gym. And so if I don't go to bed on time and go to the gym in the morning at 4 or 5 when I'm supposed to, I get up right before I'm going to come here, because I'm not going to be late coming here, God willing. And then I do the work day. And then I'm texting my wife saying, hey, it's 6 p.m. I'm headed to the gym. I'll be home by 8. So that's 2 hours of solitude that I was going to have with her, where we were going to have dinner together. It's happened several times already where I've had to pause and be like, wow, and then I can't, if she's like, man, okay, well,
I'm going to bed at 9.
Yeah, like I'm still gonna eat dinner. I need to like live my life too. And then I recognize that it's not. If I was unwise, I would blame her for me not going to the gym, or I would resent her and say, "Well, I should go. My health matters." And it's like, well, Arvin, did you have to watch every episode of Succession last night before you went to bed? Did you have to do all that? And it's like, now going back to what you said about stewarding emotional energy well. Maybe after that happens 3, 4, 5 times, and hopefully no more than that, I should sit back and go, what is it about 9 p.m. Arvin that needs to watch 4 hours of TV? What emotional energy? What's going on there? What am I stewarding or not stewarding well enough in order to do that? So that was a place where I had to pay for it. There were other places that paid me. For example, when I was 16, I was really curious about who I was going to marry, and I was like, I'm going to steward my single time correctly. I probably didn't phrase it that way, but what I did that I'm really proud of, I wish more people would do. Not in a like overly romantic walk to remember way, but more like for my own accountability. I think I've shared it on the podcast before, but when I was 16, I was like, I want the person that I marry someday to know who I am right now. So I'm going to write letters to her. And so I bought a journal and I started writing letters to, now her name is Daniela. At the time, I didn't know what her name was. And I would just write letters. Here's my life. Here's what I'm like. Here's where I'm at. And so I would spend a good maybe hour per week.
Dude, that's a movie.
It could very well be. And I'm sure it'll be
Letters
a
to
nice,
Juliet.
it'll be, yeah. Oh, is that really?
No, I'm just saying
yeah.
like, I don't know.
No, it could be a movie like called that. Absolutely. So I did that for from 16 to 25, 26, 27. So 11 years. I filled up 9 journals. They're still to this day. They're sitting in my wife's closet at home, and she reads them from time to time. It's so funny because the first one was just a 16-year-old kid, just me being like, I love you so much. I care about you so much. Like, what else was I going to say? I didn't know what else to say. But over time, realistically, and I know Daniela would be super comfortable with me sharing this, there were times where I thought I knew who she would be. And there were seasons in college
and
where
you would write them in the words.
I would write there. I'd go, I think your name is... Yeah. Oh, yeah. She knows about all of that stuff.
That's pretty cool.
So it's fascinating to look back on. And the reason I bring it up is because it kept me accountable in a way that I don't know how else God would have done it. The way God held me accountable to my future commitment to my spouse was a great example. A couple years before I met Daniela, I met somebody and they had different convictions about purity than I did. And that is a young lady. God bless her. She's great. I have nothing bad to say about her, but her experience in dating was so different and her background was so different that she thought we should have sex. Yeah. And I remember being like, oh no, I'm not gonna do that. And she laughed at it. She was like, I've never had a guy say no before. That's fascinating. And the reason that I said no was I knew that I'd have to go home after that, and I would have to tell my wife.
You'd have to write
I'd have to tell
wife.
my future wife, knowing my at the time, this is years ago, before I was on staff at Victory. Not that being on staff here makes you perfect, but it was a long time ago that in my younger 20s, I made the mistake of associating myself with that stream of, and it wouldn't have worked long term. If I had stuck around in that situation, I don't think I would have consistently said no. It would have been a difficult thing to do. So eventually I realized I need to get out of this and do it amicably. But anyways, the fact that I knew I have to go tell my wife about this later if I do go through with this, it held me accountable. And so nowadays, as I'm stepping into marriage, it's only been a couple years, like I said, it is paying me dividends because now I have this ingrained sense of accountability that I don't project onto Daniela, my wife. I think about it. That's just the type of person I am now.
Yeah.
And so she benefits from it. I benefit from it. And then because she benefits from it, then that benefit is multiplied. Lisa Bevere's talked about that before, where mankind was given dominion and multiplication. And if it goes wrong, it turns into domination and manipulation. So that's a lot of Asians. But the point being,
that's powerful.
I'm being paid dividends because of wise choices I made in my 16 to 27, 28-year-old years of singleness.
Man.
Yeah.
And then once you, this is also an encouragement. Thank you for sharing that.
Of course. Yeah.
That was really beautiful.
Absolutely.
I need to start writing letters.
Yeah, you could. You very well could. It'd be fascinating.
But one thing is that if you are married, there's this saying that says, women marry men expecting them not to change, or expecting them to change, and they don't.
Right.
Men marry women expecting them not to change, and they
do. Yeah.
And I never forgot that.
Yeah.
Because I think women, this is a dumb male thing to say, but they are introspective. Mm-hmm. And so if they maybe had a dream or a passion or a desire and they put it on the shelf at maybe, whenever they got married, expect for, the postpartum, maybe after having kids or maybe while they're having kids, to be like, you know what, I want to start my own business again.
Yeah.
And when the husband is like, oh, you don't want to do that, you are not it is one of those things that she cannot have a funeral for her dreams.
Wow. Yeah.
And knowing that like those dreams may resurface again.
Wow.
And just knowing that and being aware of that like you are still two individuals, even though you are joined as one.
Absolutely.
In a miraculous union of a covenant under God with
Absolutely.
marriage,
Yeah.
is that ladies, what they may have a fresh fire, that comes up, and it's like men, it's unique because it's kind of like a midlife crisis for them, because they're like, oh my goodness,
Yeah.
I've been working at a desk job for 20 years,
Yeah.
and I need to go dye my hair black, get a Porsche and a blonde girlfriend who's 22,
Yeah,
whatever.
sure.
I know that's a very dated saying.
But you can insert your version of.
You
I
can
understand.
insert your version of that.
Yeah.
Me talking as I have blonde hair.
I'm not gonna date
me
along.
in midst midlife crisis doing a season 4 podcast.
You say that in the Porsche.
Yeah, and I start it. There you go. Is that
The camera
Are you
zooms
one?
outside to see.
Oh,
yours.
that's funny.
Keep
Okay.
going. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. But I think that just as long as men knowing that it's never too late to reinvent yourself, then it doesn't have to be a midlife crisis. It can just be like, you know what? I'm ready for the next version of me. The beautiful thing is that God created us to consistently evolve.
Yeah.
So you're like, hey, this is what we do in our marriage, and it's been 10 years.
Yeah.
If things start to change, observe it. You don't have to put a judgment on it.
Right.
One thing I learned, now this is a therapist thing, and my therapist,
Love it.
believer,
Love
but
it.
she was like, whenever you get emotions, so growing up, I used to think, oh, crying, I subconsciously, I would go, anger, bad emotion, crying, weak emotion,
Wow.
and I would label
Sure.
emotions.
Sure.
A therapist was talking about there's no such thing as a bad emotion. You don't label them, because when you put a judgment on it,
Right.
then it actually changes you.
Yeah.
And you stuff things that you
Yeah.
don't want to feel,
Right.
to where it's the same thing whenever, if you are you've been married for a long time and maybe God is speaking to you, or maybe you're wanting to do something new and something fresh.
Yeah.
If you've labeled it as, oh, no, I couldn't do that.
Right.
All you're doing is it is growing on the inside of you.
Yeah.
And so learning how to observe it and not look at it as a dumb thing,
Right.
and then specifically not saying it is a silly idea if a spouse brings something up. You know what I'm
Absolutely.
saying?
Absolutely.
And I know that you who are listening or watching would never do that, but
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying?
No, I absolutely.
Not writing something off
Right.
if a spouse says something that's a little unique, a little different, but it's risky.
Right.
And because it may be something that, allowing them a chance to evolve as an individual.
Absolutely.
It kind of helps. I believe that whenever you encourage that, whether they fail or they don't, I feel like it does increase intimacy.
I agree. Absolutely.
So anyways, so that was what we were taught. That's what we have to say about that.
That's right.
All right. So now everyone, I want you to jump tracks with us. Ready? Jump tracks.
Your segue.
Boom. Okay. Segue. There's zero segue sentence for this, but with us working in production, we like to call this, there is something that we are in the middle of as we are producing the script and we are doing stories and films and productions.
Yeah.
We like to leave room in our budget, in our prepping, and our planning. We call it margin for miracle.
Yeah.
Or margin for mayhem.
Yeah.
And margin for miracle is, for instance, this is an example. Whenever our Victory Reach, which is our missions department, when they go on a missions trip, they have a budget for the whole trip, feeding the kids, hotel room costs, bus costs. They have free day, everything to the dime is planned out. And then they have a fund, and it is a emergency fund.
Yeah.
And it is basically if mayhem was to ensue, go to this fund.
Right.
Well, you can also leave that when you are creating or writing.
Yeah.
To where, let's say you're writing a book or a script. For us, I'm going to tell you what we do.
Sure.
So we start writing a script,
Yeah.
Leaving margin for a miracle,
Right.
margin for something to go, oh, this is a brilliant idea. We have to insert it.
Yeah.
But it's a week before the film or it's a week before the production. But leaving that margin for it and not being turned off.
Yeah.
Initially, there were personalities involved in the creative process of what we did. And it was kind of like, no, we have a plan. We're
Right.
sticking to it.
Sure.
But sometimes the plan could be better.
Absolutely.
Everybody repeat after me. The plan could be better.
better.
And so at the last minute, if you feel like, oh, I don't want to change anything because it's going to cause a ripple effect
Sure.
and everyone is going to be super ticked off,
Sure.
then you probably have not set aside margin for miracle.
Right.
Because what I see as a miracle, it doesn't have to be turning loaves of fish, loaves and fishes into bread.
Yeah.
Or multiplying
multiplying
it.
it,
I
yeah.
totally messed up the
No,
Bible
we know
story.
what you mean.
But it doesn't have to be a large miracle. It could be a small miracle.
Yeah.
So for us, we went to, and I don't know if we've said this on a podcast before, but we did an Easter production.
Right.
And it was like, oh man, we need to get extra footage. We have a new Jesus, which
Right.
sounds funny saying that, but we had a new individual playing the part of Jesus.
Yeah.
We needed B-roll footage.
That's right.
So it was kind of like, hey, I found 1 or 2 locations. We figured it out to send a small team to Utah. So we went to Utah.
Yeah.
And we went to these 2 different locations, but it was like, well, how long should we go? We can go there and back, and we can get it in 2 days. And it was like, let's give 1 more day,
Yeah.
just in case.
Sure.
Margin for miracle,
That's
just in
right.
case if something happens.
Absolutely.
Or margin for mayhem. We go and we're trying to film at a state park, and then we get X'd. That would be margin for mayhem. And we're like, we got to find a new spot.
Yeah.
And we only have 24 hours to find a new spot that we are legally allowed to film and blah, blah, blah. So there's 2 different sides. So we go and we actually are going to this location that looked so cool on Pinterest. We go, we can't find it. It is it just wasn't good.
Yeah.
And then on our way out, we see this drainage basin, and it had just rained.
Yeah.
And in this drainage basin, it is about 2 miles, and the water is about 4 inches deep for 2 miles.
Yeah.
And it drains perfectly up
Right.
to the base of a mountain.
Yeah.
And it had just rained, and it looked like glass.
Yeah.
And we pulled over and we go, oh my goodness, this is insane.
Yeah.
It was golden hour.
Yeah, it's
we
perfect.
go, Jesus, get out of the van. The guy who played Jesus,
Yeah.
Joseph, super cool guy.
Yeah,
So we
really
were like,
cool.
Jesus, get out of the van now.
Yeah.
And we were like, we want you just to step in this water. And
Yeah.
he's like, oh my goodness, it's cold, because it was like melted snow. And he starts walking, and we go, oh, stop.
Yeah.
Spencer, our cinematographer, go get that camera right now.
Yeah.
Get the drone. I started being a little bit crazy because
It was so beautiful.
It looked
Yeah.
as if he was walking on water.
It was amazing.
So
insane.
it was one of those things that wasn't planned.
Yeah.
But it was like, oh man, and it was one of those things that even though it wasn't planned, the margin was planned.
Absolutely. Exactly.
And it was like, wait, and literally in it, there was someone on our trip who said, this is not in the script. And our response was, it does. We will find a way to get this in the script.
Yeah.
And we did a montage
Right.
of basically a coming of age of
Yeah.
Jesus from the wilderness to when the
Right.
Holy Spirit spoke to him. So the final product looked insane, and it was
Unbelievable.
beautiful,
Right.
and it looked like it was planned.
Yeah.
When in reality, it wasn't.
Right.
We went to a location and it didn't work out, and then, a miracle. I like to call it a miracle.
Yeah.
Because I feel like it makes life more beautiful
Yeah.
if I call it a miracle. Because
Right.
I'm like, God did that for us.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Taking ownership of it.
Yeah.
And even small things where it's like, you're walking in a parking lot, you see a quarter on the ground, you go, look at God. Margin for miracle, baby.
Yeah.
I wasn't even going to walk in this parking lot, and look at God blessing my finances.
Yeah.
Even taking those small things, I think that's kind of okay, that's kind of zany.
Sure.
But you know what I'm saying? And so in that,
Yeah.
it was like we were able to get this shot. And most people were like, hey, how did you guys green screen that? And I go,
Right.
it wasn't green screen. It was a point and shoot.
Hardly even edited.
It was literally like, yeah, we didn't even really edit it.
There wasn't much color grading or anything.
There wasn't anything.
Yeah,
It was like,
awesome.
that was just nature.
there.
That was God's thing.
Yeah.
And we just happened to be there. And they go, where is that place? And I
Yeah.
said, well, it's here.
Yeah.
And then they Google imaged it. They go, it's not on the map. And I go, oh, it rained the day before.
Yeah.
And it was only there for 2 days.
That's crazy.
And so it's
wild.
So things like that.
Yeah.
Leaving margin for miracle. And, obviously the question was, well, it's not in the script. Find a way to get it in
Yeah.
there. Whatever makes the story richer.
Absolutely.
Some of the best documentaries is we have a plan for a documentary.
Sure.
And they start shooting a documentary, and then all of a sudden, something bonkers happens.
Yeah.
And they go, this needs to be in the documentary because this
Yeah.
is a plot twist.
Right.
And they go, yeah, but that's not what we're shooting about.
Sure.
They go, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
People will watch this.
Yeah. Exactly.
And so if you are creating art, and I know this is maybe difficult if you're a songwriter or whatever, but, well, no, maybe it isn't.
Mm-hmm.
But like wherever you're at, leaving margin for miracle
Mm-hmm.
or even margin for mayhem. For us, we're doing a conference. We moved Victory Conference
Yeah.
from August to January, which is
right.
the first time
in 40-something years.
Yeah, in 40 years,
Yeah.
we moved the conference. And it was literally Paul and Ashley were like, we feel like our team needs a break.
Yeah.
Which
Margin.
is... Yeah, it was margin, and everyone goes, well, wait, we can't because we always do conference in August.
Sure.
And that's how we get people into our Bible college. That's how we get people into our school.
Mm-hmm.
And Pastor Paul and Pastor Ashley are like, okay, well, let's amp up our marketing.
Mm-hmm.
Like our school and our college should not hinge
Yeah.
on a
Depend
conference.
on a conference. That's right.
And it's like, we're not going to do it.
Yeah.
And it's like, and it's not because we're lazy. It's not because of scheduling conflicts. It's literally because it was like, we're going to give ourselves margin
Yeah.
because we believe we're going to, like, God is doing something.
Yeah.
There are some ministers that plan out sermon series and
Sure.
then they're like, okay,
Great.
November is over. So let's stop talking about thankfulness and it's time to talk about the birth of Christ because it's December.
Sure.
Because that's how sermon series are. Pastor Paul started a sermon series called The Book of Acts.
Yeah.
And it was literally the week after Easter. And 3 weeks in, he goes, yeah, we're just going to keep doing this until it's done.
Yeah.
And people are like, okay, well, do we need to do new sermon series graphic arts? Do we need to do? He goes, no, we're doing the Book of Acts.
Yeah.
Like, okay, but the weekend service, do we want to switch it up? Maybe hit on relationships in the
Yeah.
summer.
Yeah.
And it was literally the guiding of the Holy Spirit. Whether you believe in the Holy Spirit or not, like we do.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and so you're like, well, that's not really a great way to plan. Here's the thing. We plan, but the plan is not the law.
That's right.
And I think that if you are working in a creative department or whatever,
Yeah.
have a detailed plan.
Sure.
Whether it's for a lobby setup,
Right.
whether it's for planning center and you're entering everything in,
Yeah.
but leaving margin for miracle, for God to do something.
Right.
In the planning center, Victory Worship, the worship team, and I'm not saying you have to do this.
Sure.
So when I'm saying this, you need to ask, if you're from another church, you should ask your pastor.
Yeah.
But in planning center, it goes song 1, the title, song 2, the title, as we're planning for a weekend service. And then it literally has a block and it says flow time.
Yeah.
And then it ends with a song and then a bridge,
Yeah.
song 3 and song 4. That flow time, it is margin to where it's
Yeah.
like, okay, if God wants to do something, great. But if not, now I know that takes trust, but that has been built over time. But I just think it is a beautiful thing when you give margin for the miracles of God.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. Because what it really boils down to, what we're talking about, is the difference between God's control and ours. And I think
Ooh, that's good.
I've done both mistakes. There's two possible mistakes. Which one is I'm going to be in complete control. And that's the person who would not leave margin. And they're thinking of the idealistic, best possible ending, and they do not plan for any interruption. They do not add any margin. That's the person who says, I'm going to do everything I have to do. I'm going to do all of it. And then I'll tell God what I want him to do. And then there's the person who, when that falls apart, because it inevitably does, reality doesn't pause, And so when stuff falls apart, they go, fine, you know. And I've made this mistake in my early 20s where I was like, all right, so God's in control, so I'm going to do nothing. And I will sit back and do nothing. One mistake is saying, I'm going to build the ark and I'm going to flood the world. If you remember Noah.
Yes.
And I'm going to do everything. I'm going to figure out how to flood the whole world.
Yeah, this is good. You've said this.
The other mistake is, I'm not going to build the ark. God told me to build one. Well, I'm going to entrust it to God. So the reality is, it is a partnership where God says, this is what I'm asking you to do. This is what I will do. I will do it at the right time. And so I won't get long-winded and preachy about this, but the thing that has driven me the last several years is the understanding that I need to show up and figure out, what tree do I cut down today? What piece of wood do I sand today?
As you're building the ark.
I'm building an ark, meaning I'm creating a container that God can then move. What's interesting is God gives Noah specific instructions, including instructions to build a door that is too big for Noah to move. So Noah, he has to make a decision as he's building it. Like, am I going to manipulate the animals that I have to try and use their strength to shut the door? Or am I going to wait on God? At the proper time, once it's built, it's still not a boat because the door's not shut. If it rains and floods, then it's just an open floor plan for it's a casket, really.
Yeah.
So God moves his hand on it and shuts it, and then Noah can be elevated with his family safely. So I say all that to say, there is a balance, an ebb and flow between us and the Holy Spirit, whether it's a creative element, whether you're on a church staff, or if you're a mom planning the week for your kids, planning for margin to have for miracles or mayhem, and often they are the same thing.
Miracles and mayhem are the same
sometimes
thing.
It's
Mind
mayhem
blown.
at first, and then the miracle happens. In fact, you could probably say you can't really call it a miracle unless there was mayhem first. And so Noah is the great example, because he's like, I'll show up, I'll do my part, I will not manipulate what God's entrusted me to take care of to try and make the whole thing happen.
Yeah.
And then when you get to that place and you realize the whole point of that is God's saying, I don't want to wait for you to figure out how to control the whole world to then feel like you are worthy of being close to me. I want to do this process with you. Like, I will come in and do the portions of it that you can't do. And then I will instruct you on how to, that one scripture from David in Psalm 23, where it says, he makes me lie down in green pastures. The fact that he had to be forced to do it.
Those of you who are listening, say, Lord, make me.
Lord, make me. Exactly. So it's like, I am fascinated, especially in the last 6 months, with the whole concept of reality, because it does not change no matter what you say. No matter what you believe, no matter what you do, reality is reality. It's not transferable. So that being said, planning with margin for mayhem and miracles is having a nuanced understanding of the sovereignty of God, that the whole thing is under his control. But my love for God motivates me to do the things that he's entrusted to me temporarily. Like that parable of the talents where he gives them several coins and the guy with 2 has to turn 2 into 4. There's a task to be done. The whole kingdom's not dependent on it. And this is where it gets tricky for a lot of millennials and Gen Z people, is that if I don't turn 2 into 4, does the kingdom fall apart? You have a personal failure that you didn't plan for with margin for either mayhem or miracles. So that's where the whole deconstruction thing happens. And it's like,
oh, you mean when people deconstruct
I'm
God?
saying, yeah, there's a chance that, like, it happened for me. It was an opportunity in my early 20s when I thought, okay, if I'm not allowed to completely be in control of everything, then I'll sit back and wait for God to do everything. And when he didn't do everything, I thought, oh, maybe there is no God. It was that arrogant of me to be like, my personal failure is indicative of, like, there is no kingdom whatsoever. But the whole, anyways, I don't want to get verbose and say all these different biblical examples. The point I'm trying to make is the intention of God is that we would operate with an awareness of his sovereignty and his call of what we're supposed to accomplish, because the miracle is probably on the other side of mayhem.
The miracle is on the other side of mayhem.
Yeah.
I love that. And one more thing that you were talking about, whenever Noah built the ark, you've said this before, is that Noah didn't go get the animals.
Exactly.
God brought them.
They brought them. Exactly.
And it's like sometimes in our world as creatives, those of you who are listening, God gives you an idea.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh my gosh, I have a story. And I wrote the story.
Yeah.
So now I'm going to go get it funded, and
Sure.
I'm going to make it a movie, and
Sure.
I need someone to finance it. And it's like, well, did God tell you to do that, or did God tell you to write the story?
Sure. Exactly. Absolutely.
And then it's like, just do what God told you to do.
Right.
And then let the God work be done by God.
Exactly.
Because then it's like, man, it was so difficult getting the elephants in the ark. And God's like, Noah, why are you chasing elephants?
Yeah.
Like, I was going to bring them in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Anyways.
No, it's real.
That is beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, anyways, we hope that today you were okay with a popcorn thing.
Yeah.
Hit on relationships a little bit.
Yeah.
And then we hit on this.
Margin. Yeah.
So this is the last miracle story, is that last night I was with our producer. His name is Caleb Toronzo.
Yes.
And we were filming a shoot in the middle of a field. Now, I just got a puppy for my daughter's birthday. It's a mutt, a miracle mutt.
Yeah.
Actually, there's nothing, well, there is something miraculous
Sure.
about it. It's a, anyways, so very cute dog. My daughter named him Junior.
Yeah.
So Junior was with me because he has dug 5 holes in my backyard, and I have met all of my neighbors. I did a bad job of not meeting them before. And because on his tag, it has my cell number.
That's so good.
And so
Yeah.
people go, hey, I have your dog. I live at blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And I drive over there, and they go, oh, well, hi, I'm so-and-so. And I go, hi, I'm John. And they go, so where are you guys? And I'm like, I'm actually in that house right there. And they go, did you just move in? I go, no, I've been there for 2 years. And it just shows that I'm a really bad neighbor.
Oh.
I'm just up here a lot.
You're a neutral neighbor. You're not bad.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
bad
yeah.
if you're messing up their house.
That's true, yeah.
Yeah.
And I go, I was the guy that egged your home. I'm kidding. So, Junior has definitely helped me get out of my box. So last night, we were doing this shoot, and we utilized fireworks within this film shoot. And Junior jumps out of the back of my truck and takes off to the woods.
Oh.
Now, this is like 9:45 at night.
Yikes.
And all of the people are like, oh, man, after the shoot, they were like, your dog just jumped and ran off. Well, then everyone felt bad. So all these people started looking for my dog. There was a 4-wheeler driving through the woods, me, my truck, another person's truck, our friend
gosh.
Dom. There was cars. They went to all the neighbors, gave the neighbors their numbers, showed them the picture, and then put it on a neighborhood watch Facebook of like, this is the puppy and puppy. So the guy's land we were using, he goes, hey, so goats, chickens, and dogs have actually been eaten out here because of coyotes and bobcats.
Yikes.
So your puppy is dead. He said that to me.
He was trying to be kind and break the news.
Yeah. You know how certain people just have zero... What do you call that?
I don't even know. He was direct.
Yes. Yeah. He smiled too. He goes, yeah. Your puppy's probably dead.
Your puppy's
and
dead.
then smiled. And I go, okay, well, I'm going to continue looking. All these people are looking.
Yeah.
After an hour, I felt bad. And I was like, okay, everyone, it's
late at
okay.
night,
Just go home. And so I was like, angels, I send you out.
Yeah.
Because I grew up. Have you guys ever sent out angels? Who else?
That's a
sends
whole
out angels?
concept. Yeah.
That's a whole concept.
Yeah.
If you grew up in a church, I'm a PK.
Yeah.
And my parents taught me how to send out my angels. And I was like, I send out my angel.
Yeah.
Arvin's angel.
That's right.
I'm going to need to borrow.
2
other
can put
people's
10,000 to flight.
2 can put 10,000. I'm also going to need a hedge.
Yeah.
A hedge of protection around my puppy.
Yeah.
So, anyways, sent out my angels.
Yeah.
And I was like, you guys do God's work.
Yeah.
Because I have to be up at the church early in the morning.
Yeah.
So I went out, and then that next morning, this morning, actually, as we're recording this, I woke up and someone had texted me. They go, hey, I heard that your dog ran away. You should go put your articles of clothing where he disappeared, because dogs can smell their owner from like a mile. And I was like, oh, okay. So I drive out to this country road, and I have a laundry basket, and I'm tossing clothes out the window in this field, and someone is watering their yard, and they go, what are you doing? And I go, getting dogs. Just throwing clothes out my window.
Yeah.
And then I drove around, whistled, clapped, Junior.
Yeah.
Didn't come. I had to, hurry up to work. I'm sitting at work, and at 10:30 a.m., this lady calls me, and she's like, "Hi," and I go, "Hello, who is this?" And she goes, "We have your puppy," and I was like, "Oh my goodness!"
Yeah.
And she goes, "Yeah, we were walking a dog, and he ran out of the woods and started licking us, and was just so lovey, and he was just a ball of joy."
Yeah.
So, yeah, we walked him all the way back to our house,
Wow.
and we're here. This is our address. And I looked, and it was literally 2 miles away.
Junior went 2 miles.
My puppy went 2 miles away to the next town over. And so me and Arvin drive out to the town. We get my puppy, and he's just like smiling,
Completely
licking.
fine.
Yeah, completely fine.
Yeah.
And I was like, look at God.
Right.
Margin for miracles.
Absolutely.
So anyways, I know that has nothing to do with anything.
It's a great
but
story, though.
It is a good story.
It's a
and you
good
guys
story.
Yeah. should value that.
Yeah.
But I just think if it was me, if I was a pessimist, I was like, okay, I need to go tell my kids that their puppy was eaten by a bobcat.
Yikes. Yeah.
And just get it over with, and let's just own up to it.
Yeah.
But I was like, I'm still going to hold on because I believe
Yeah.
the angels are going to bring my dog back. And I believe it's a miracle. I don't think that is. I'm one of those people that I'm like, I don't believe in coincidence. I don't believe in any of that stuff. I'm like, that was a miracle.
Yeah.
And so, anyways, it's always good to look at those things like that. Like, and sometimes what Arvin said, sometimes you need the mayhem
Yeah. Before the miracle.
before the miracle.
Totally.
Anyways, hey,
Yeah.
thank you guys for
Appreciate
listening to
it.
this sporadic podcast.
We
We
love it.
love you guys.
We'll see you next time.
No, I should probably
clothes
go
are still out there?
The clothes are still out there. And okay, now we're over. Okay, bye.